Welcome back to the Keiser Report. Time now to turn to Michael Krieger of Liberty Blitzkrieg. Michael writes about economics, finance, and politics, and lots of good stuff. Michael, welcome back.
Hey, Max, great to be here.
Well, first of all, please explain how a breakdown in liberal ideology gave us Trump.
Okay, yeah, so that's a pretty loaded question, and it's the title of actually a 2-part series I did on my website. To really kind of understand where I was coming from and what I meant by that, you kind of have to talk about what spiral dynamics is, which is the root of that entire post. And that's a theory. It's a human consciousness development model that was first proposed in 1974 by a psychologist, Claire Graves. And ever since then, it's been the research has continued for decades. And these two guys, Don Beck and Chris Cowan, came out with a book called Spiral Dynamics. Huge book. I haven't read it. And then other people like Ken Wilber have talked about it too. Basically, what Spiral Dynamics talks about is it puts people, groups, and it talks about how human beings change over time based on their circumstances. And there's all sorts of different levels. And so what I meant in that post is that in around the 1960s, we started to see the emergence of what's called a green level. It's a 6th level of the subsistence levels. And it started out with some really good ideas. So what it did was it built on the prior level, which is seen as orange and was characterized by stuff like the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Enlightenment, the ending of slavery, had to do with individual rights and freedom and liberty and for all people, that everyone kind of deserved that sort of thing. And what green did was it started taking that to another level. Where you started becoming more connected with Earth itself, so realizing that human beings are not treating the Earth properly, we're just destroying the environment to pursue our own ends. It also had to do with understanding animal welfare, that animals are living creatures that deserve respect and rights and all these things. So in any event, it started off really good in the 60s, but almost as soon as it started, it descended into what Ken Wilber calls pathological green, or nihilism and narcissism. And so this has been going on for decades. And that's sort of where we find ourselves now. And Trump's election and rise to prominence was a rejection of this unhealthy green, of this pathological green, in where there's no truth, where everything is relative. And a big part of it that he describes is that it became mostly empty slogans. So in other words, the ideas were good. Everyone has everyone's equal. Everyone has their own perspective, which is valid. Everyone should have the right opportunity economically, right? It's very egalitarian. But when you looked at the society, right? When you look at society around us, it's extraordinarily unequal. It's more unequal than it's probably been since the 1920s. So essentially, while this green emergence started off good, it ended up being empty, and it sold us a bill of goods. And Trump was basically society saying to the dominant ideology in America, which you could, I guess, call liberalism, you failed us. It was a lie. And I think that's essentially what I was trying to get to in the piece.
It sounds like you're smoking a lot of pot out there in Colorado.
Not so much, but actually when I
now let me jump back in. So in other words, you've got now Spiral Dynamics, which is a new one for me. Right. But it sounds like what we're talking about here are, let me just jump in here, some pretty big psychological, socioeconomic cycles that help inform us in terms of our current cultural zeitgeist, and we're apparently in a period of extreme narcissism. Let me just try to bring this back to markets for a second, because in the stock market, of course, it's a function in many ways of groupthink and psychology. And back in the dot-com era, when America Online went public, and people were on America Online, they said, oh, I'm on America Online, I'm going to buy stock in America Online, became a form of financial narcissism. So, Michael, do you see this playing out in world markets? Because last week, around the world, markets added $5 trillion in 1 week. Is that a function of business acumen and GDP growth, or some kind of frickin' spirally dynamic narcissistic fandango? Your thoughts?
Right. So that's a great question. Just to be clear, though, so people understand, because this is really serious stuff. The spiral dynamics has been, as I mentioned, this was a very prominent psychologist who first proposed this theory in 1974, and it's only been confirmed since then. So this isn't just like some wacky woo-woo theory. This is very much backed up by extensive research over the course of decades. So as far as markets, so markets would, and you'd have to read my pieces and spiral dynamics to understand what I'm saying here, but markets, the dominance of markets and sort of individual capitalism, Wall Street, Ayn Rand kind of philosophy, that goes into the sort of orange level of existence, right? Which would be before green. And so taking that to that extreme, as you were just discussing, as we have now with Wall Street running crazy, everything going nuts, like the corporate state essentially falls into that level of consciousness. What I sort of see happening as far as things are concerned is again, and we've both been talking about this forever, is a collapse under its own weight of the current systems that we have, which are dominated by this fake liberal ideology and then this extreme individualistic, rise to the top at all costs ideology. Those are the two dominant ideologies in America today, and both are failing. So I think that's a key thing to understand. So the key is what comes next. But that's what I think. I think essentially our entire culture has been lying to us. It's been telling us that if you work hard, if you're smart, you're going to succeed. And that's just completely untrue. It's the facts don't bear that out. So we're right now searching as a society in the West in general. We're searching for what's next. How do we respond to this gigantic cultural lie that has been imposed upon us, right? And I think that's where we go. But to me, I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. But I do see a disintegration of so many of the institutions and systems that we're currently living under just because they're not working anymore. They're failing.
One of the premises here, one of the questions is to talk about the rise of Trump and the fact that the liberals are now citing conspiracy theories, and guys like, Alex Jones are now considered almost like Walter Cronkite, the voice of reason in this media space. There's been a complete polarization. There's been a complete flip-flop, if you will. And so the need for this type of view of where we are psychologically in America's history, is it sustainable in that sense? I mean, if you see Snapchat, which is the ultimate in narcissism,
right,
going public in a town like Los Angeles, which is built on narcissism,
right,
that's narcissistically within a bubble of narcissism run by narcissists for a society of narcissists, but nobody seems to be able to stop it.
It sort of has to, in my opinion, again, it sort of has to blow up on itself. And that's part of what, Ken Wilber discusses in his ebook as Trump being sort of a necessary evolutionary regression in human development. In other words, the leading edge, or what the liberal, ideology and the mainstream media and all of them have been telling us, has now been exposed to be complete nonsense, complete BS, because our reality does not fit into that equation. So what's happened instead is Trump is bringing to the fore a lot of the other spheres of existence or consciousnesses that are still existent in America, and he's kind of banded them together to say, we're going to reject this, right? So we're going to reject the dominant ideology because it failed, which is absolutely true. The issue that I have is that I don't embrace the sort of a lot of the memes and ideas that Trump is pushing forward. So to me, they're all narcissistic, right? So all of these early tiers of development, the 6 early tiers of development, they're all very tribal. They're all very narcissistic. They all believe that they are the absolute truth and everyone else is wrong. So they just fight against each other. And that's what we're seeing in our society more, right? Everyone thinks that they have all the answers and the other side is absolutely the worst. The key with an integral perspective, which is where we need to go, which is second tier thinking, which is the evolution in consciousness that we need to get to, in my opinion, is what it does is it transcends and includes. So it takes all of the good parts of all the different segments of existence in America and puts them together and says all of these ideas or ideologies have some validity, and we need to take the good parts and discard the bad parts. And what we've been doing in America is taking all the bad parts. So we've been taking the bad parts of conservatism, the bad parts of liberalism, the bad parts of libertarianism, bad parts of everything, and that's policy. We need to do the exact opposite.
Well, is it necessary to go down this this path of analyzing the collective unconscious and ascribe chakras, and colors to the current paradigm. In other words, are we completely divorcing ourselves from all factors of economy, economics, and other metrics of society? Are we in like a post-Enlightenment age? We've left Adam Smith?
Right.
Is this the 21st century and Trump is the hallmark of something completely new? Because I got to tell you, what you're saying here, it sounds like you've kind of like on a vector and you're leaving everything behind. Like Michael Krieger has just reinvented himself. There's something completely new here. Is that a correct statement? Yeah. If so, I'm along for the ride, buddy. Okay. It sounds exciting. Well, what exactly is going on here?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say when I read this biodynamic stuff, it just put in perspective a lot of things I was already thinking. So in other words, when I look at people, right, when I see like the Republicans and the Democrats, right, one's calling, the liberals will call Trump supporters Nazis. And Trump supporters will call liberals Marxists or communists, right? And I see that, and I say to myself, they're both crazy. Right. That's sort of all that biodynamics is trying to describe. It's just trying to say that those groups are in this more primitive state of consciousness, and we need to sort of understand and include the good values that each of those sides has. And right now we're just fighting in tribes, and we're not going to get anything done. The only thing that's going to happen if we keep doing this is we're going to have some sort of civil war, and it's not going to be a good thing. So no, I mean this is sort of how I've always felt. It just provided a framework that has had decades of study under it to understand it. And let me just explain something about the colors, Max. It's interesting. So Don Beck, one of the guys who wrote Spiral Dynamics, he actually was key in getting rid of apartheid in South Africa. And actually found that using colors was very helpful in a polarized racial society like South Africa, because you could describe people in terms of their consciousness in colors as opposed to being the blacks or the whites, So he would say like, well, this group of white people in South Africa are operating under a blue consciousness, and this group of people in South Africa are operating under a red consciousness. And it just helps you understand people a lot better. And that's where I'm coming from. So I do want to
well, how can we explore this more fully? Because, okay, we're almost out of time in this interview. I feel like we've only scratched the surface. Right. How are we going to expand on this? It sounds like important stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, should we do some kind of separate podcast? Or what do you want to do, Michael? Because you're leading something here. I want to participate. We're out of time on this show. Where are we going with this? Do we need to come to Colorado and go into an ashram and smoke some dope and really study this in more depth? What should we do?
Look, what you should really do is look at my pieces on this stuff. Just search Spiral Dynamics on my website. I put a bunch of links. There's this one. It's not a long article by Ken Wilber in 2000, and that's the one that sort of like blew my mind. So people should read it. And let me just say that this is for the minority. A lot of people are not going to understand this stuff, but a lot of people have come to me and told me that it sort of changed their entire ability to see the world as it stands right now. So,
all right, we got to cut it off there. As I said, Michael, thanks so much for being on the show.
Sure, Max. Thanks.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of Ken Casey and the Happy Wanderers along the microbus of psychedelia. I want to thank our guest, Michael Krieger of Liberty Blitzkrieg. Boy, he's out there now. Beautiful. And Stacy Herbert. If you want to catch us on Twitter, Keiser Report. Until next time,